Hello and welcome. Nice. How was your travels? Was good. Cold. There we go. Spelkollektivet going live. Seems like it's okay. Alrighty. So today we're gonna have a talk about UI Toolkit, which is the newest, not so new anymore, but the newest UI framework in Unity. It's gonna be a fairly technical talk about first half an hour, or I actually don't know how fast I'll go. We'll be just spending in code, and then I'll also show the parts where are the UI builders which are built in. So this is a fair warning. We're doing this at the IndieQuest. We have a course where I don't think I have it opened anymore. But yeah, basically I'm gonna go through one of those missions that the questers do to get things set up. And basically the idea here is that you at least see for the first time, if you've never done UI Toolkit, at least that was the case for me. I've always used the built-in Unity GUI from before, and you know, and anytime there's a new technology you haven't seen how it just to get started, it seems maybe scary, and then you know comes a game jam, you're just gonna go with what's comfortable. But once you see it once, at least you're like, oh, okay, that's how it looks, how it started, and here you have the opportunity to just sit down and chill and get that passively into your heads. Yeah, so with that said, the state of the art of the Unity's UI, here in UI or down here, this is how the section looks like, comparison of UI systems in Unity, because they have three. And one is the UI Toolkit, which we'll be talking about today. The one you are probably everybody is using is the Unity UI, also known as UGUI. And then there's the IM GUI, which is the immediate GUI, which is for, so as you can see, this one is recommended to be used in the editor, so to extending the editor itself, which what we'll be showing today. Whereas the Unity UI is recommended for your actual game's UI. UI Toolkit was made to replace both of them, and to so basically have a unified thing, and to bring in other developers who know, for example, how to do HTML and CSS, how to design UI for websites, because it's pretty much based on UI Toolkit is pretty much has the same underlying framework of Visual 3 and CSS or styles and that kind of stuff. Right now, as you can see, 2021 is the LTS that we are using. I don't think 2022 is in LTS yet. But anyway, if you switch to 2022, yeah, it's not. You can see here that they already start recommending UI Toolkit for the editor. So when I was choosing what to do for how to extend the editor for the IndieQuest, I was trying to be future-looking so that hopefully this is useful. They still don't recommend UI Toolkit for runtime. It's not perfect as many Unity technologies that are trying to phase out. It does not support everything that Unity UI does. Specifically, the main one is embedding the UI into the world itself. You know, when you create a canvas element, you can choose whether it's as an overlay or if it exists in the game world. UI Toolkit doesn't do that yet. And there's other stuff, so yeah, that's why they're a little bit hesitant on their side as well, which is the usual state of Unity stuff. When they have multiple technologies, they can't decide what they want. But I'm hoping, like there was a Unite Talk 2022, where they were showing stuff from Unity UI Toolkit also for in-game, and they are saying, yeah, in the future they will be switching so that this will be the default. All right, so what will we be doing? By the way, any questions so far? And if you feel like just throw questions at me, I'm like, this is sort of informal and I just like to deal with questions as they come. Just yell at me, because I might also not be looking at your hands. So what we'll be doing is we'll be taking one of our demos, which I put here, at the IndieQuest. So basically here is our little game. It's an object-oriented course where the goal is to implement the Dungeons and Dragons rules. So the questers start with just doing this bottom part where there's a simulation of a fight going on, and then here you actually, that was just very non-object oriented, but then you implement all the architecture on top, to have monsters, items, all of the stuff you can imagine. So this is a basic game, but it is at this point this person is dead, throwing death throws. None of this matters, because what we'll be looking is just the editor stuff. So hopefully this 200% zoomed UI, yeah, everybody can see. It makes it a bit hard for me to work with, but should be okay. So the main thing we'll be looking is, here we have scriptable objects for all of the things in the game. Right now, at this point, it's items, meaning weapons and armor, and monsters. So monsters are, here we have a couple of examples as there, and this is how you get for a scriptable object. You get your inspector showing you all of the properties and things. So far so good. I think everybody's been working with this at some point if you've done in Unity. So here you can see this is my scriptable object for the monsters. You know, all the typical stuff like alignment. The main one that I'm looking at is this ability scores. Let's take a look at it. This is what I was showing at SGDC. The annoying part about it is ability scores appear like this. You have to expand them, and then you have to expand them again, and then you can write your scores in. It's not a big deal, you know, deal with it. You click a bunch, you move on with your life. But, you know, if we learn how to customize this kind of stuff for us, well, this knowledge will be useful for many other things that you might want to customize, create some custom, you know, things in your editors, and then hopefully eventually also then, you know, do your in-game user interface with it. So I feel like it's a useful knowledge to get over. Why does this appear like this? Well, because my scriptable object here has ability scores, which is a custom class, and this custom class ability scores, which describes strength, dexterity, constitution. For each one of these abilities, instead of just having an int, it has another class, which is ability score. And why I want this, because, well, it has the int in there, but I also want to have a modifier property, which is calculated out of it. And then by default, how Unity works is it creates, whenever you have an object, like an object it doesn't know how to deal with, it just creates this foldable thing, and then it creates for every public property there is, or serializable property, it can be private, but serializable, it creates a little thing, and then because this is another object, it creates it like this. Okay. So what we're trying to do here is, you know, get rid of this and create a custom inspector for these ability scores, which we will do here. So in here, so where do you get the instructions for this? When you are working with this stuff, yeah, here UI Toolkit is going to be your sort of main documentation stuff, and then support for editor UI is where you will find this kind of stuff. There is create a custom inspector, which is what we'll be doing. I'll just be using this to copy paste stuff out of, so we don't have to type most of the stuff. We're just going to skip a bunch of stuff at the start. I should also say that just like here, if I go back here for a moment, with Unity UI, you're used to, you know, dragging game objects down onto your canvas and then editing parameters there in the inspector of where things are being built. If you've ever used IM GUI, it's code-based. So while you're inside of a custom editor, there's a method called onGUI, and then you just say, hey, create this button. It's all instantiated from code. The same thing is for UI Toolkit. It supports both of these workflows, which we'll both go through. And it's the same as you would have on a website where you can write stuff in HTML and just get those elements out, or you can create those elements from JavaScript and inject them into the page. So for the first part, we're going to spend creating stuff in inside of C#, just like if we were working with this. And for the second part, we're also going to take a look at the editor. So for the first part, let's go back now. So I'm going to switch this just in case something changed, because I was working with this. So we said UI Toolkit, support for editor UI, create a custom inspector. So we're creating a custom inspector. So there's all this stuff. How many of you have worked with HTML before? Okay, so general knowledge, I would say. So you know, I'm not gonna go too deep into how that works, but just as a basic thing, you know, every time you have a web page, it's basically a tree structure of elements with children elements, right? So we'll be creating from code, we'll be just creating this kind of elements. Instead of divs, they're called just visual element and then labels and stuff like that, just like HTML would have. In fact, the first thing, so we said we're gonna do a property drawer. Whenever Unity shows this kind of a stuff, this is a property drawer that knows how to draw. You know, these ones are very simple. Armor class is just an int, it's just this kind of stuff, you know, supports this kind of manipulation. So we'll create a custom ability. Let's scroll down where it shows how to do that. Doing data binding. Property fields. Create a custom property drawer. There we go. So they also, like this example, they, you know, they have some custom class that they want to show a property drawer of, and basically you just create another, you create a class that inherits from property drawer, and you put custom property drawer attribute on it so that it knows from this point on, use this class to know how to display any object that is of this type. So we're gonna put this into our game. Not hub this. Anytime you have code that just goes into the editor and it's not part of your actual build, like all of our editor extension will be, you put it into an editor folder. So I like to do one right up here. And then inside of the editor folder, I create scripts just like I would have normally. You could also go the other way around. You could have scripts, and then in scripts create an editor folder. It would do the same thing. But as soon as it's just in somewhere down below an editor folder, it's gonna work like that. So this is gonna be a custom property drawer for the ability scores. Property drawer. And now we're just gonna copy paste stuff from their example. The only thing I wanna kind of keep is well, actually I could, okay, I'm gonna do it like this. I wanna keep this. Get rid of this part. And then using, let's put it up there. Okay. What is this property drawer going to be for the type of ability scores? Right. See, the basic is similar. Like when it's about to create the property to create the display, you just have to give it a visual element. Visual element being one part of the DOM, like a div. So here they create it. Here we will put stuff in. And then you would return it. So let's see, as soon as we have this registered here, it should. Here we go. So let's go into one of our, also this is a live demo, so I might fuck up many times. Apologies in advance, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Scriptable objects, here's our monsters, there we go. So ability scores, now it disappeared, the whole foldable thing, and just says, no GUI implemented. Oh no. So we could just for a test. Let's create. So here, by the way, yeah. So my ability scores has well, strength, all of those 6 things. So we're just gonna go across all of the abilities in ability. Oh yeah, it's an enum, so we have to do enum get values. Type of ability. So ability is all the values of it. Probably not the most efficient way to doing it, but it's gonna work for now. And then for each ability, let's just create a label and put it in just to see if things work. So we're gonna do a label. Oops. This is just for testing. Label just takes some text. Let's just go with whatever, just to test things out. and then we add it to the parent, right? Container.add label. Like I'm saying, this is now the coding way of doing this for those of you who prefer it this way. But we could be creating all of these labels and all that stuff in the editor, which we'll do later. All right, let's go back. Oops, yeah, it's this one. And as we can see, nothing changed. And that is because by default, this editor is still just using the IMGUI hookups. Because in fact, this class, we could have just as easily used it with IMGUI, but just this is called onGUI instead of create property GUI. And because the whole editor, the whole inspector for the scriptable object itself is not a UI Toolkit thing, it's also not detecting any UI Toolkit code inside. So these are the kind of things that, when you just read the documentation, you then wonder for 5 minutes why it doesn't work, and you Google frantically, and eventually you find out that this is the problem. So if you run into this kind of trouble, it's probably because your editor itself for the monster type scriptable object isn't made with UI Toolkit. So we need to create that as well. So we will create a custom editor, C# script. So this will be a custom editor for the monster type. So monster type editor. This one will be very simple because all we need to do is we need to say, hey, use this as UI Toolkit. And in fact here, one part of it up at the start that I skipped to make a point, I guess, is creating a custom editor for it. So it's not enough that you just do a custom editor for the property. You also need a custom inspector, custom editor. It's very simple. You just inherit from editor, and you have the custom editor attribute. So nothing crazy. Oh yeah. This goes down here. It's going to be a custom editor for monster type. And like we said, it inherits from editor. Okay. And then the final thing is, just like the other has the, create whatever visual element, the same goes for editors. There's a method that you override that tells, well, how do you want to create things, right? Create inspector GUI, it just expects, hey, create me a DOM element, give it to me, and I'll render it for you. I just keep saying DOM. I don't know if Unity actually uses DOM. That's the HTML expression for it where I come from. So now, if I didn't fuck up anything, we should just get this custom inspector. There we go. This is a custom inspector. Now it would be a pain in the ass if we had to now recreate the whole thing that the thing built before for us. Luckily we don't have to, because it has Unity somewhere down here in this document, has the code for creating a default inspector. Just do what Unity would have done before, which is very useful. And just literally field default inspector. So here, instead of giving this simple label, we will field the default inspector, which visual element we want to field. This one, serialized object, is the reference to our monster type. And well, not directly to it, but to a wrapper around it, representing, hey, this is the object we're trying to display with all of the bindings between, so that it can refresh the editor when it needs to refresh. Let's see. Hold on. There we go. So now we have the basic thing back again, plus our ability scores have been replaced with our little for loop here, right? So now we can fix it so that it'll actually show something readable. So that was back in our this. Instead of just saying A, let's create a, let's just create the name for it. So that would be the ability name. We're just gonna, simple conversion to string. Semicolon. And there's another thing, because I'm using my enums have a guarding value none, I'm just gonna skip that one up here as I'm going in for each. I don't know if there's a better way of doing this. Please shout out at me. Ability is none. Continue. And double equals would be nice. Okay.
I had a teacher that would scream at you because of this code.
Why?
He would say you should not do if ability not equal and then put everything else because he used to say it's backwards.
He wanted to have it nested?
Yes.
Oh wow. Yeah, I go exactly the opposite. Reduce nesting as much as.
He would compare those to like go-to statement.
Yeah, fair
You
enough.
should avoid it.
Yeah.
I don't.
There's a video. There's a new YouTube channel that started not too long ago about code aesthetics, where I heard the expression "never nester," which is the tendency to never nest. To as much as possible, you just quit whatever you can so that you don't have to nest. So yeah, two philosophies as always.
I see the point for both of them.
Yeah, exactly. Then you choose whatever is prettier. Oh, that's the old one. That's the new one. There we go. So now we have strength, dexterity, wisdom, charisma, all appearing over here. So now, the next thing, we should give them the ability to actually edit the property itself. Again, we could, there is a, let's see, where is it here? There's this custom property drawer. There we go, the property field. So whenever you want to just create sort of the default, right? Every time we're looking at this, like this kind of like, this is, for example, a default property, how an int would be represented in the inspector, or how a string would be represented. So again, we don't have to invent the wheel of creating a little label and creating a integer text box, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of built-in stuff and into Unity so that you can just use it and quickly get stuff done. So instead of a label, we would just create a new property field. Property field being, so, except let's not just immediately put it in. Let's create our little references. So this will be our, well, let's just call it ability field for now. We'll find out. We'll probably massage it a little bit later. Ability field is new. You have to give it a serializable property. So this is the one that's corresponding to the ability scores. But now we're inside of our for each. We want to get to the specific one we are trying to get. You can see here they're trying to get find property relative. And this is exactly what we need. We need to get down from ability scores down to the correct ability score for us. So this will be another serialized property, but for this particular ability. So instead of ability scores, it's going to be ability score property. So we start with this property, and then we go down. What name do we go down, however? Property ability name. Well, the easy answer would be just ability name dot to lowercase invariant, because that's how you get from ability scores. If I have strength, the enums are uppercase for me. The ability scores are lowercase, so you just cast down to get there. So then we would use this. Okay, create a new serialized property from this string. And now that we have this, we can then pass it in. And for the name, well, we can use our ability name. I think I have one too many. And then once we have it, we add it to our container. So instead of adding this stupid label that is just dummy, let's just set the whole ability field. It's not going to work immediately. Let's see what kind of error it gives me if it does. Oops. It just disappears. Our ability types are now just gone. Basically, it didn't find strength, whatever we were talking about. The problem is, if I remember correctly, hopefully it's this, because I'm trying to make a old school proper object-oriented course where all of the data is encapsulated and hidden from the private variables. The fields are hidden from the outside world. I use properties everywhere. And because properties, the part that actually stores this is not called strength when you serialize this field. By the way, if you didn't know, you can actually serialize properties. You just have to put field in front of it. This is how it would be if it was just a normal private field. And then you do field, meaning that, hey, please serialize the backing field, because these are auto-generated properties. If you had your own properties that you just generated, that you made private fields up yourself, then you wouldn't need this. But if you have generated properties, then you have to be like, hey, please serialize the backing field of this. And then what Unity does is, or I guess it's Unity, the backing field, what they call it is, so I'm gonna put this in, and they call it these things around it, outside, and then K __ backing field. And this is another 1 hour of my life, trying to figure out why this did not work. Okay. So now technically, let's see. So we have the ability property name. We say, hey, please just show, please show the custom inspector, or please show the default sort of inspector, property inspector for this property. Show this name in front of it. And let's see if that actually worked. And there we go. Now we have we are back again at the score. So far we still have these ones. Why? Because it's just giving us a default inspector for an object for the whole ability score, which by default it creates this foldout. But at least we don't have to do it twice. Obviously we're not going to stop here. But so far we've gotten this far. What we really should do is we should really just expose this score field itself, right? Which means, go back here, we should really go down to the score field. Actually, there's two ways I guess we can go about it. Let's go in this way. Let's just find another child of this child. So this is just the score property itself. It's not very nice naming, but it's a live demo, so it will survive. So if we start with our ability score property, and then we find property relative, and this time we're trying to go, so basically this is what I'm trying to do, right? Ability scores, we correctly came down to either, for example, strength dexterity, which is an ability score, but then ability score has another automatic property with just the score as its name. So we're trying to get to the backing field of the score, just as what we're doing. So in this case, we're trying to get down to score K __ backing field. Once you figure it out what's happening, then it's okay. But yeah, Googling for this kind of stuff when you're not using exactly things like in their examples is, yeah, you spend a bunch of time on their forums. And oh yeah, so score property. So now we shouldn't be using ability score property anymore, but let's use this one instead. There we go. And now we have our little nice, nothing to expand score properties. So, you know, see, there's all feeds in correctly between and still have all the nice things. Ta-da. Okay, half an hour in. Okay, I guess we can do more. Let's do the modifier, right? Every one of these things has a modifier, but modifier is a sort of calculated property off of it. So what we need in this case then is we need just a label that's just gonna have text. We're not gonna be editing the modifier, we're just gonna display it. So we will need to create another label here. Modifier label. I just take some text. Right now there's no, we don't know what to put in. Still need to add it to the container. Let's just do it down here. And let's prepare a method for ourselves where we're gonna update the modifier, because the modifier will need to be updated every time the property itself changes. So private void update modifier. Here I'm just gonna peek in because this is the little part that I've changed from how I usually do this, how I used to do it before, because I also learned something new today, how you can actually hook up variables, properties. Anyway, update modifier, what I'm gonna send in is my ability score object, which has the modifier, and then the label where I'm trying to change things. So I do need to get to my ability score to send in. So basically this is what I'm trying to do. I've created a label, and then I'm gonna say update modifier, and I give it the ability score, and then I give it this label. But how do I get to the ability score? The ability score, well, I guess there are a couple of ways, but I'll just show it like this. The ability scores, so this property drawer is for ability scores. So property is a wrapper around the actual ability score, and you can get what it is wrapped around if you just see what it is, what's the underlying property. So we can get the ability score, actually ability scores. How do we get it back out? You go to property and do get underlying value, which is an object, so then you also have to cast it into what you're expecting. Ability scores. And then I have on ability scores, I have an indexer so that I can just give it an enum. So then we can just do, when I have to pass in, because we are inside of a for each which has the enum, so I can just say here, for the ability scores, ability. And this should update it. Yeah, it's probably because it's possible that it's null if this didn't succeed, but we're gonna trust that it's not gonna fail on us. And then it's just gonna take the modifier, put it in parentheses. Hopefully. Never know. There we go. So we have it. Right now we haven't hooked it up yet, so whenever I change this, it's not automatically changing. So let's also make the updates, live updates. I'm also gonna just copy it from here. Here we go. I have it called a little bit different, but we'll fix it right now. So after we modify it, we're going to track the property field. You have, whenever you're tracking a property field, so basically we're tracking changes, you have to hook it up onto some field or onto some DOM element. So we can just choose, for example, the ability field itself, and then we track property. Which property are we tracking? Well, the score itself. So here's another gotcha. That's why I said that I learned something today. If I were to just trying to track the ability score itself, it would not work. It would say the property is of a generic type and we don't support tracking of it. That's because ability score is my custom object, so they just say it's generic. What they have built-in tracking is for integers, strings, vectors, a lot of the built-in stuff. So you do actually have to hook it up onto something that is at the lowest level of Unity's understanding. And our score property is in the end an int. It's wrapper around an int. So I have to have score property. I just discovered this today, so last time I was actually tracking the whole serializable objects property, but that's obviously whenever you change something completely different, then it refreshes everything. So this is the proper way to do it as far as I can tell. But we have to use our score property, that's what we're tracking, because otherwise not. And then it's just a callback, ability score. Okay, it would be again this one. Let's just create it here so we don't have to create it twice. So this is here. Now we can just use it in both places. Okay, so far been following ish, yeah.
So does the callback get triggered whenever you update that field in the inspector?
Yes. Probably even from any kind of code, because this whole serializable stuff, it literally tracks changes to the whatever is wrapped around. So from whatever point that serializable object or that serializable field would be, anything that's serializable doesn't have to do with serializable objects. Anything that's marked as serializable that is being changed. So I don't think it would matter if it's from the editor. It should always update it. Because you could be changing. Let's say, yeah, exactly. For example, you can press a button to. Later on, I have the press a button, it downloads all the data, and then it just automatically updates everywhere. Let's see. This works now. Yeah, there we go. So now it's updating immediately. Okay, so this is the end of the technical part of the talk. Just how do you hook things together? This is kind of how it would look like. There is easier ways to bind stuff when you're just trying to get down to the values when you are inside of the graphical interface, which I'll also show at the end. But hooking this kind of stuff up that is sort of automatic, or not automatic, but relies on other stuff is, at least so far, I've seen that I have to do it from code. But don't quote me on that. I've only been dealing with this for the Indie Quest since January. So there's basically take anything I'm saying today as 80% true. There's always place for double check me because I'm new to this as well. So I'm just giving you my demo of all the things I've learned on the way, but I'm definitely no authority figure on actually claiming, oh, this is how this is done. But yeah, so this is sort of the basic way how to hook things up. Yep.
So I just had a question before you leave the technical part here, where you had to use a custom inspector GUI to get it to even show up.
Yes.
What if I wanted to show the ability score thing in
on its own?
I had a custom draw for it and I wanted to put it in, it could be in any arbitrary class.
I have no idea.
There's no way to do that? Or?
I have no idea. I mean, you would just have to create
because with the old one you can do that anyway.
Yeah, because the old one is using the old one.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't tested it. You're saying that, let's say that I just had, I don't know, some component basically that had ability scores instead of the scriptable object. That's a great question. Let's test it at the very end if because we can just hook it up into some game object and see what would happen. I don't know. That's a very good question, because it might be that their internal ones actually are using UI Toolkit already, or maybe if I went to 2023, because this is 2021, then maybe they're all using Unity UI Toolkit by default. I don't know, but yeah, we can test it at the end. So at this point, what I want to switch to is more of the visual stuff, because this does not look nice. So at this point, those of you who have done HTML will have a little bit of an advantage, specifically if you've heard of a thing called Flexbox. Who's done Flexbox here? A couple, yeah, a few. HTML for a long time has been just sort of flow-based, things kind of like you expect from Word when you're typing stuff down. So it was kind of hard to do user interfaces. At some point we got absolute positioning, which was able to do more like game-like UIs. And then at one point later, they also introduced Flexbox, which is gives you an ability to tile things left, right, up, down, down, up. A lot of this kind of stuff, I feel like if you're using the old UI, you also have to if you want to have like just, I don't know, a bunch of things one after another in the UI, you have these container components that it automatically tiles stuff for you. With UI Toolkit, you get these things kind of for free out of, because they're basically their display model is either absolute positioning or flexbox. So for those new to flexbox, or even if you just want to refresh your memory.
Är det du som är bas där?
Nej, det är inte det som pratar där.
Finns det någon som är bas där?
He's asking for someone in charge.
Yeah, as much not. Yeah, James.
Okej, vi gör så här.
Technical difficulties in the stream.
Och så ber du ringa mig där på det numret.
I think Johanna is the boss. Perfect. Thank you, Johanna. Again, what would you do without you? But yeah, anyway, my favorite cheat sheet for Flexbox is this article called "A Complete Guide to Flexbox." Done already back in 2013. This is where I learned it from. I mean, yeah, now, and I didn't even think about it. It's been 10 years already in circulation, like the Flexbox thing. But yeah, it just gives you these nice little cheat sheets of how things work, because especially for people new to coming from the old school HTML stuff, it's like, oh, this is all different. But the main thing is, or the things that we'll work with today is in Flexbox, one container, by default, all the children, because it's all about how the children get positioned in the parent. By default, all the children will just get stuck one after another from top down. But then with flex direction, you can change this so that you can stack something going from left to right, which is what was the hard part about old websites when you wanted to have 3 columns and stuff, and there was no way how to, I mean, there were many hacks and stuff.
Do you know grid, the display grid?
Maybe-ish.
Yeah, because it kind of replaced that. It's so better.
Yeah.
Way better.
But yeah, so there's, HTML, just as Unity's internal struggle for what to do, they also have 10 different ways of how to position stuff. But this one was the first one that was like, okay, I can actually make, it was, for some things it's easy, for some things it's not, and then you try to customize, and this one also doesn't work perfect. So, but anyway, flex direction is how we can, because what are we trying to fix? We're trying to fix here that the strand 17 and 3 appear one after another. Oh, by the way, just like you know how I did this here when I do the inspect thing, and then I see exactly how things are being ordered, you can do that with UI Toolkit, which is also very good when you're trying to figure out what the hell is going wrong with your code. Up here, you can do UI Toolkit debugger. And then you get a little debugger window, and then you can right click and do inspect element. And then you get basically the same thing. I mean, you can see how much they're inspired by web technology. So here's our thing, right? We've created so here's our property field. This is the one for, let me make this bigger. This is our, you can see even this is like literally the same as Chrome. But yeah, so here you have here's our property field for the ability scores. And inside we've created, this is first our own container element that we've created. And then here inside is all of these property fields we've filled in. So we'd like this one and this one, property field and the label, we want them to appear side by side, right? We just want these 3 to be stuck at the end. So the way we'll do it is we'll join these 2 together into one element, one parent, and make it display side by side with flex horizontal, I guess. So we need, instead of just adding them straight into the container, we're just going to create a parent for both of them. So that's going to be a visual element is just the default div that you just use to group things together, just like we've created one up here. So this will be the ability element, for example. And then ability element. Let's not forget to add this one to the container instead. But this one we don't have to set up. But now instead of adding stuff to the container, we add them here. So they will appear under this new parent. And then because now they're under this parent, we can actually style the parent. Oh my God. just like in HTML, you could immediately, in the HTML tag, immediately say style and style things up. You can also do the same thing here. It's called inline styles. Then later on, for those of you who know CSS, you can obviously apply classes and then style it from the outside. But you can also just overwrite style things in between. And so for ability element, for those two things to appear side by side, we need to change the flex direction to flex direction dot row. Let's see. Almost what we want. What's happening here? Well, you can see if I would have made this a little bit wider, you can actually you can't even see. In here, in behind, the thing is being sort of squished in. We can inspect to see that that's the case. So we have our little visual element. This is the one we just created, and underneath is the property field and the label. The problem is this, which has the integer field underneath. This integer label is just this small thing in there. So what we need to do is we go back to our understanding on Flexbox, and there's a property called FlexGrow, which, for example, if you give all elements the same number, it's going to evenly space them out. If you give them bigger, they're going to be proportionally spaced out. So what by default this is set to 0. It's also default in HTML. So none of those are growing. So they're just taking kind of like half space. But we want the first one to grow so that it kicks the other one out. So the ability field is the one that should grow. Again, we'll just change the inline style. But this is the flex grow property. Set it to 1. And there we go. And now we have this nice editor for updates, and we have, yeah, everything, no expansion needed. This is how you can solve the IndieQuest mission Unit 9.
Thank you.
Yes.
Does FlexGrow have a default value?
Does flex, which one?
FlexGrow.
Flex grows 0.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
So
it would be
the
0.
The modifier right now is 0.
Yes, 0, 1. So yeah, it's gonna squish it as much as needed. I mean, you can test here. If I do this, you can see how it's taking as little space as possible, and the other one is taking as much space as possible. Okay. At this point, well, we want to keep this down to an hour, right? So I will just sort of, instead of building it out, I will just show you how I have expanded this inside of the editor, just to save us. Well, I don't know. Let me start it up, and then I'll skip to the actual working implementation. Because what we want to do now is, okay, so we can keep fiddling with these styles inline, but it would be nicer, especially if we want to create something more complex, like to make it appear like this, if we would be able to just prepare it in our little editor and then style it there and then just import it in. So the way to go about this is we want to create our own little HTML and CSS file, which in Unity is called UXML and USS or something like that. So here we're besides our scripts, I'll see how much I get in 10 minutes, and then I'll just show you the result. We call it UXML, which is where we'll store our little elements, and then create all the way down here somewhere in UI Toolkit. We have the UI document, which then stores these elements between them. So this will be our inspector for a single ability score. So ability. This is our ability score UXML. When you double click it, now you get into this UI builder, right? You could, by the way, behind the scenes, let's not get too carried away with this editor. Behind the scenes, this is just an XML file. It's basically HTML. So right now, if you fuck UI editors and stuff, you could just start writing stuff in here, just like you would HTML from code. But if you are a designer, or if you just like to not have to do this by hand, you can also then use the editor. Here's our little thing, and then we can just drag and drop. Sorry, yeah, this is as big as it with this 200% scaling. This is how you get. So for example, here we have a visual element. Right before, basically we'll redo what we've done here, but we'll redo it in the editor. Right. We go here. So we had our little top container, which is in technically we don't even need it. We could basically just go down to the label name. Let's see which ones we'll need. We'll need the label name, and then we'll need that visual element that's going to hold that integer field and the modifier label. So 2 labels and an integer field. All right, label. But yeah, you also have visual elements if you need to group stuff. Label is down here. Control, you just, good old drag and drop. And then you give things names usually. You can give them classes, and you give them names, just double click. So this will be our name of the whole, strength or whatever. So you give it a name. It's the same as ID in HTML. And then the next thing, we need to do a visual element, so we can use that horizontal or flex direction row underneath. This will be for our value. And then inside here, first we need an integer field. Unfortunately, as you scroll down, there's no integer field. And the reason for that is that this is right now showing, like I said, UI Toolkit can be used for in-game stuff and for editor stuff. So by default, it's just showing you what you could use in-game. Anything from the Unity editor namespace is not shown. To make that happen, you go all the way up and enable editor extension authoring. You can now use editor-only controls in this document. Perfect. And then down here, we now get editor-only stuff, hopefully. Probably. Sorry?
Why would they put that option there instead of there?
Actually, why isn't it showing up? That's a good idea. Maybe I need to save it.
So
It's the property of the whole UXML file. That's why it's in there.
Yeah.
But I don't
Okay, I'm
know why
just
it
gonna-
even exists. Like, why do we need to restrict integer controls to editor only? Like, might be necessary.
There we go.
in some cases.
Numeric fields editor only. So now we get it. So we need an integer field.
kind of weird.
Place it underneath value. And then we also need another label for the modifier. Labels are up here. Yeah, this looks better on a 100% scale, but you'll survive. So this is our modifier, and this is our score. We don't want it to. In this design, there's nothing that says score or something, so we're just gonna get rid of this int field stuff. So now you're sort of, now you're back in sort of the old school world where you have the inspector and just editing stuff here nicely visually. Yes?
Is this going to be taken up in the Unity designing with code thing, or is this like a different thing?
Yeah, this is a different thing. Inside of Unity, right now you're gonna soon, I think you will be on Unit 5. And on Unit 5, you will be learning everything about this one, Unity UI. Unity GUI. So this information you get from the Create with Code course, and then when you're doing programming too, you learn about sort of the new way to do things, which is the UI Toolkit. Yep, good question. Okay, so we have our score, we have our modifier. Let's put them just like before. Here are all of our inline styles, like I said, but I could be creating, here you create style sheets. I'll just show you very quickly how my main document, which uses this, how it looks like. I could create a CSN and just drag and drop it down. You can see here which style sheets I'm using. But now I'm just gonna, dirty, and we just set the direction to be like this. Then we can, for example, we can go, oh yeah, what did we also do? We did this to be grow. Flex grow 1. See defaults here, shrink 1, shrink grow 0, 0. to answer your question. And then this one, let's do it text, I guess. Let's put it in the center, make it bold, all this kind of stuff. Okay, save it. And now to get it inside of, now we need to actually instantiate it, because right now this, you know, just exists as an XML document out here. We need to now get it inside of here. Wait, did I click? Yeah, I did click correct. So that we don't have to manually be instantiating these visual elements and stuff. We'll just get them from our little layout file. Or so I'm just gonna copy paste again from here. This is the load and clone a visual tree from UXML. I could also copy paste it from here. It's all, if you go through this tutorial, you will sort of in a very less rushed fashion go over all of what I'm showing you. That's what the questers go through. This document first, and then they on their own do what I'm showing today. So we just need to do this once up here. We load the visual tree from UXML. So it's basically, it's using because it's in the editor, you have to use the asset database, and it has to be, you know, you have to give it a proper path how to get there. But out of it, you will get a visual tree asset. And then this visual tree asset you can instantiate. So for each one of these abilities that I'm trying to show, we are going to instantiate it. And it gives you a template container, which is also just one specific visual element. And I think at this point I will then switch to just show you the code where I have this implemented in the previous iteration. But yeah, this would be the gist. I create it here, then I will, let me just call it layout. Then I would add the layout instead of, for example, this visual element, right? This visual element, I don't have to create. Actually, this one is the one that we did to be the row. Okay, no, so yeah, anyway, sorry, my bad. This one is the one that actually creates them the whole thing side by side. Oh no, this one is the grouping one. Anyway, now I'm sort of losing myself in which one it was. But basically what we would do is, you know, we would be able to, then I would basically just, yeah, because this is the parent, sorry. So basically here, right? Our ability element, we would add it to our ability element. So layout, the other way around. Ability element dot add layout, and now all of a sudden, all of these visual elements labels that we've created here are already inside. The only final thing is, how do you now get to them? So for example, here, instead of creating a new property field for for example here, the modifier label, instead of creating a new one, we would just get it out of our layout. And the way you do this is you have a query option, which would then give you all the results, all of the elements that match this. But I also have a shorthand version Q, which just gives you the first result. So you would say, hey, I'm looking for the label that is called modifier, because that's how I named it inside. And now whenever now this one references this, where is it called? No, a name modifier. From this point on, instead of instantiating, now it points to this. Sort of straightforward, I guess. And here, let me just show you how the rest of it is hooked up. This is essentially the same code. I just did it before when I was doing a dry run. So for example, I found the name label and then put in the ability name, except I just did the first three letters so that it's str and to uppercase so that it appears there. Similarly here, this is what I just showed. You just search for the modifier. The only thing that is a little bit special is this one. When I'm searching for the score, I can't just set the score to be to show the integer, because then it wouldn't be bound to the actual changing value underneath. So there's also this bind property thing where you say, hey, start. This one now needs to be linked to actually reflect all the changes that are happening to the property. But that's sort of the gist of it. And then here in the old one, this is what we would get to. This is the demo one. So this is what would essentially happen when I do all of this, right? All of these are hooked up now to the same values, except I didn't create them from code. I created them in this ability score file, right? So this is the same, what I did before. Name, value, score modifier. And then on each one of these, yeah, they appear. So whenever you change something, you know, this is being changed. And when you go across different things, here's our frogs from last time. Yeah, it's being updated. And then when you take this really to the top level to close off, here is how it looks like in my full implementation. Until it loads, let's do another. Here's our giant frog from last time. Right, I have a full custom full custom editor at this point because I want very specific things. Oh yeah, this one we didn't put a sprite on it. Let's take I don't know, giant bat, right? I wanted a lot of this extra stuff that isn't even part of the scriptable object itself. So I just overridden the whole, how to create the whole editor. I have more fancy positioning and stuff like that. I have these things where whenever you add something, it just adds itself to a description up there so that I, you know, just at a glance when I'm looking at things, I kind of see, oh, this has a skilled stealth +4. So that it resembles this thing as much as possible. You can see here, senses, passive perception 11. I go here, there. Passive perspective, where is it? Senses, passive perception 11. I wanted to make it as much as, you know, 1-to-1 as it is. Even these actions it auto-generates from whatever weapon I give it and stuff like that. Just to show you how that looks like inside of the editor. Monster type. It shows a little bit shit here with this 200%. I don't know, it started messing everything up. I don't think they tested it on 200%. But yeah, basically what I wanted to show you. So here's the whole tree of stuff because I've completely recreated it. Yeah, statistics, everything is in here. But I'm also using labels. Why? I'm also using classes. So for example, down here, you see these rule providers visuals. Right, I have extra section. Both rule providers and visuals are an extra section. So if I now wanna decide, okay, I want this to be styled different, I just go to the class itself, and well, yeah, apparently I've changed. Because here it shows you which things are being overridden, right? So top is being different than what it would be by default. So if I change it here, it just applies to all of them, which is what you want. And then the great part about this is, I was just thinking about, for example, how Lena's game Broken Alliance is doing, right? Because they have different factions, and she's building this UI which has different like ornaments for different factions. This would be super simple to then, you know, use the images and everything and colors or whatever for that faction, put it all in the USS file or CSS, whatever. I mean, yeah, it's basically a CSS file, right? And then just create one of these for each one of the factions, and then you just apply it based on who you're playing. You can have previews here, for example, well, because this is an editor UI, you just, for example, you can change between dark theme and light theme, just to have a quick preview how it would look somewhere else. But you could have here all of the different CSSs or something like that. So you could quickly preview stuff. But yeah, this is sort of a short intro into this wonderful world of what UI might Unity recommend in 2024, or for editors already now. Thank you. Yes?
So they're also working to make it like the recommended thing for in-game?
Not yet, as far as I've seen. Or was that a statement or a question?
A question, I guess.
I would guess that yes, but I haven't seen anything official. The thing is that if they want to really replace it, they should. I can kind of see why they can't yet, because it's a completely different sort of paradigm of thinking and rendering. So it has these caveats, unfortunately, which is why they don't recommend it yet. For example, here, discard. when I am editing a scriptable object, for example, I wanted to have up here when I am typing a monster in. Oh, there should be. Oh, assertion failed. Index was outside of range. Maybe I'm not gonna show you this today. Maybe I've changed the. Oh wow. Maybe I've changed the code too much now. Wait. Let's do a. Oh, is that gonna be a? Is that gonna be dangerous? I don't know. Let's find out. I'll spend 1 minute on this. Home is games. Monster Quest. Oops. Windows. Okay. I don't know. I don't know if this is gonna work. Actually, I should probably reload, please. Probably should have closed Unity. Let's try closing it as well. I'll just do it again. But the point was, I did this drop down element where you start typing the name, it shows a drop down. By the way I would normally do this, because then the drop down needs to appear in front of all the other components. For example, let's see if it works. Otherwise, I'll just verbally describe what the hell I'm talking about. There you go. So you see, as I start to type, right, I get the whole thing down. The way I would have usually done this is, well, I have created this element here. Because this autocomplete relates to this field, I'm just going to create this autocomplete element div here just right after it. But then when it's displayed, I'm going to use the z-index value to bring it in front of others. Well, it turns out that in their implementation of CSS and HTML, they just do not support z-index. So you literally cannot, for example, just put something in front of stuff. You are bound to the order of how things are done in the element tree. Therefore, is why I have to have, oh, not for ability scores, for the monster type. I have to have my autocomplete at the very end, and then I just use positioning, absolute positioning to. So it's going to be rendered at the end, or it's going to be rendered on top of everything because it's at the end of the tree. But then I absolute position it to the top of the parent so that it appears right in the right place. So there's all these kind of caveats of like, oh, yes, it is like CSS, but it doesn't do this. And if you're used to how you would have solved something in HTML, CSS, sometimes you get, shot. And then, okay, I need the different way. So hopefully they would fix this. Hopefully it's not. I was going around the forums and reading this kind of stuff, and they were like, yeah, if we want to support this kind of rendering, we need to sort of re-implement a lot of how our internal rendering works, because that's why all the browsers are also shit at this, to actually give you the same result when you have all of these nested contexts and how things are relatively positioned to each other. Yes, so I don't know. Yes, no, I don't know.
I'm just scared whenever there's like some new package from Unity. Should I actually learn it, or is it going to be one of those abandoned projects?
One of things that is scary is this, I think. UI Toolkit. Actually, I don't know. When was it introduced? I don't know if this is a good way to search this. Was announced sometimes in 2017. So, they've been working on it for what now? 5 years? And it's still not the recommended thing? That part is scary to me. But when I was deciding, okay, what do I do for the Indie Quest? It felt like, well, I mean, I've seen that 2022 talk, by the way. 2022, what is it called? What's the Unity conference called? There's a good one, long one. How is it called? Unite, right? Yeah. Extending the Unity editor with custom tools, yeah. So I recommend watching this talk as well. So, you hear it from the developers. They're sort of like, yeah, we are, this is what we're going to recommend in the future. And they show you an example. It is a custom tools for the editor, but they also show, okay, the UI is, the editor is working for the game. And then they sort of show how they interoperate as well, like how you can just use the styles you've done for the game to be the same inside. So I recommend you watching this talk. But yeah, I had to.
Okay, back to the builder. I noticed there's something missing here. So the multi-column list-through comes with a lot of features, and actually, I want to point out this one, which actually applies to all.
At least in the browser, so I don't know in Unity.
Yeah.
The CSS specification says that it should work like that. If the parent is relative, then the absolute child would not be absolute to the whole thing, but just to the container?
Maybe. There's no relative positioning. It's either
It's just absolute a block?
it's absolute or flex.
Oh.
Let me see if I am
That's
mistaken.
weird.
This one is,
Okay.
I need to double check. But position, oh no, actually it does have relative positioning. Okay. Display you have none, yeah, flex or none. So there's no display block, there's no display inline, it's either flex or none. And then position apparently relative or absolute. Maybe.
In
I'm talking
CSS,
about
it's not just relative, it's static by default.
Yeah.
And that's different than relative.
Yeah. I don't know. I tried for a while and I couldn't, and I was Googling stuff. It might be, maybe. I don't know. Is that a question? Yeah.
Yeah, I tried UI Toolkit a bit, and like my biggest concern is not the styling in the stuff, which is kind of okay, I would say, but the interactivity. Like, have you worked with something like React, for example?
Yes.
Yeah, so like in React, you can like create dynamic elements. You can define that. You can pass some props. You can create dynamic elements which accept some parameters, and then you can reuse it. And apparently that's completely another thing in Unity, in UI Toolkit, and that kind of makes it like very unusable in real life situations. So might be too much to ask, but in the spirit of that, can you like demonstrate maybe like to-do list application?
Right now, off the top of my hand, probably not. But what I was gonna say is the easy way to bind stuff. Like when I was just recreating this, like a lot of stuff like the armor class, it's as simple as it is an integer field. And when you want to say what should it bind to, you don't have to always bind from code. I don't know if this semi answers your question or not. But usually you just define binding path here, and then it'll all sort of bind itself. All of the fields will bind itself to the correct serialize or whatever it's called, serialized properties underneath. So I always just have these binding paths defined, and then it does all the wiring for you. I don't know if this have answers. Like, so this is how I would, for the most part, make sure that the underlying data and the UI are showing the same thing. I don't know if this was your question or not.
Kind of seems only work in like super simple cases.
It is possible, yeah. It's like it's a there are definitely edge cases, or not, maybe not even edge cases, just cases where things would, for example, what's easier here is, and I don't know, because I also haven't coded that much UI itself in Unity, so that's why I said take this with an 80% mark. For example, all of this kind of stuff that has to happen on hover, little animations that hover, just make it stuff, this kind of stuff I would say is much easier here, because, the same as in CSS transitions, you just say, oh, this delay, make it this much bigger, and it just takes care of all of those things. Whereas, something else might be like, I don't know, a to-do list or something, I don't know.
Yeah.
Might be way harder to now actually bind it, because, well, you've defined it here, but now you still have to write the code that's actually going to be duplicating this and, I don't know, wiring it together.
Yes, and I meant more like, for example, like we might have some parameter, like the number of slots, like integer parameter from 1 to 10.
Yeah.
Like in React, it's like 100% encapsulated. You pass this parameter,
And it will
then
just create
the code. If it sees like accept 6, it will create 6 elements.
Yeah.
So the number of elements, child elements, can be variable. Like if you pass 1, it's going to be 1 child element. If you pass 10, it should be 10 child elements.
I mean, just from how I was working with it, I haven't fully explored with this to 200%. I also can't right now. All of the stuff, I don't know if they have some sort of, for each element here, because usually that's how, like, I'm not using React directly, I'm using Blaze, but same thing. But yeah, you would just say each, and then you give it any kind of enumeratable element, and then it's going to create copies of that. I don't know if they put something like here, or sometimes it's also like this. Sometimes they don't expose in the editor something that they have actually exposed here. So it is possible that there is a UI tag here that does have, I don't know, bindable element. Maybe there's some sort of for each stuff that they just don't expose there, but they do here. And UI namespace is the ones in the main thing. UIE is all of the other ones that are also in the editor. But if not, then yeah. But just like from my experience of it, you know, there would be an int field. I would bind to it. I guess I would be on demand. I would be recreating all the children. I would throw all the children away, recreate all the children, just set the bindable paths to. So I don't have to do the whole binding thing. I just set the binding field. Maybe it would work, but yeah, it's very hard for me to answer actually, without the more experience of it. Did you want to try the thing?
Yes.
Or you have other questions?
I have another thing.
Okay. Which do you want first?
The code.
Sorry?
In the first code you wrote.
Yes. Yeah, I guess it's this one. We are in this one. Yeah.
Yes. This method, what is it called? On visual something?
Oh yeah, yeah. On visual create property GUI.
Okay, so that seems to explain itself. It just goes once and you instantiate everything, and then it's the binding that sort of makes it.
Yes, exactly. So this code will run once. Well, will run whenever the editor encounters an ability scores. Yeah. And then it asks, how do I display this? Okay, here's the DOMs, here's the visual elements. And then it will keep to it for the remainder.
Every time you click on a scriptable object, it does this?
Yes.
Okay.
It recreates the whole thing. Which is also why, I don't know if you've seen, but this is because of how I had things hooked up before. When I, for the first time, clicked on, I clicked quickly away so you wouldn't notice. But when for the first time I clicked on, I don't know, Aboleth, these things didn't fill in because I have it hooked up only on when the thing changes. So whenever I clicked it for the first time, the when it's updated didn't hook in yet. So then the next time I changed it, then it started recreating and refilling everything. But yes, so yes, everything gets thrown out and redrawn, which can become sometimes, I guess, a problem if you did some very crazy stuff. I don't know, because you can create crazy inspectors, as you know. Yeah.
And then okay, so then the second part is, does this work? Like it's in by default in 2019.1 and 4?
Yes.
So I can make a plugin with
Oh, I don't know, 2019. I'm using 20. Wait, wasn't I using 2021? Yeah.
I just, when you googled it before, it was introduced in
Yeah. But 2021 has it on by default. You don't have to install a package. Probably earlier you do have to.
Right.
Yeah. But in here it's by default. You will see. Well, basically, if you see when you are in Unity, if you have, UI Toolkit. Yeah. If you have UI Toolkit here, it should be, and then probably you would even see it here. Okay, that's the old probably Unity UI. Actually, I don't know. But yes, in this one definitely it was on by default. Yeah. Yeah. Now let's close up and feel free to escape now. Let's just put let's choose one stupid game object. I don't know. Yeah, let's just do game manager. It's fine. What do we put? We just put an ability score on it, and we'll see what happens. So game manager would be here. Let's just go public. So the whole we have an inspector. Actually, here I have an inspector for both ability score and. So let's just do. Let's try both. What happens? Strength, and then public ability scores. All the scores. I don't know. We'll find out. Oh wait, which one am I in? Is it in the second one? No, in the UI Toolkit demo too. Yeah. Okay, so game manager. Okay, so we have. Wait, did they not appear at all? Wait, I need to do one that's just normal. It is possible that they're not because on GUI isn't called, right? It's very possible that this did not work. Public int a, just to sort of put them in between something. Oh, what did I do there? Oh, public. Oops. There we go. Save. It's this one, right? I don't know why is this so small. Wait, this might not be the one. Monster Quest. Oh, I was on the wrong one, by the way. Game. Okay, so let's see. We have A. We have Strength, which is the old one, and all the scores. Yeah, it does not pick it up. That's your answer. I don't know, maybe there's a way how you force something else. I haven't looked into it. Yeah. All right, cool. Thank you very much. Hopefully you got scared a little. UI GUI is deprecated.
I want to check if it's going on. Do you want to try it?
Oh yeah. So you proposed. Wait. So let's go into. Shit. Did I close it down?
If you want to, you can reset the Zoom stuff.
Yeah. Let's reset
because
it.
it feels like you are having struggle because of this Zoom.
I mean, for me, it's like it's a educational project, so I'm not super hung out on it. But yeah, let's open it up.
I'm just curious.
Yeah,
I'm already scared of Unity enough.
Because my idea was, well, I'm gonna have a visual element, like a div up where the name is, and then have a child div that's gonna be for the autocomplete, and then say, hey, z-index1, and set it at the bottom down, right?
I'm thinking about the two possibilities. The first one is that the position relative and absolute will position it properly, but it won't solve the z-index problem. And the second possibility is that you actually don't even need it to touch it, because you should actually use maybe some input kind of thing.
But before we do this, let me fucking...
There's no.
I just want to decrease the whole thing to 10%.
Okay.
If I can remember where that was UI scaling, so that we can normally work from now on.
Okay.
But I need to restart.
But it's just for educational purposes.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
I've tried doing
Just for fun.
I'm all up for fun. But I'm gonna sit down. Oh my god.
Yes, yes.
Wait, but you, with the on-GUI thing, you still use properties.
But I like that they are going into this kind of DOM territory, because it feels like familiar for me.
There we go.
I don't know if it's good, but it's familiar.
Okay, so we are saying, let me open this up. So display name autocomplete, which, well, let's first of all, wait, I didn't put anything. Let's just put something in it.
Don't they have something like an autocomplete field already ready for you?
Actually, Igor is not, Igor! We can check out how I did this autocomplete, because this one basically creates as many elements as possible. I already forgot how I did. I'm just gonna literally just look now. Because it has nothing in it.
I don't need to be like a parrot. I can walk.
Yeah, you can also go there, yeah. Okay, let me also go here out of presentation mode. Oh, but I didn't open it up yet. Give me a sec. So this would be the inspector for monster type inspector.
Oh no, he's trying another.
Yeah, I suppose I just haven't looked into that yet.
Okay. How did I solve this? Display name autocomplete. I got it out. What did I hook in? Register callback. When I go in and out, yeah, that's for yeah, I did a bunch of stuff. I'm just gonna see where I'm dealing with this. On display now autocomplete mouse center, nope. Okay, update display name autocomplete. Okay, yeah, I think, yeah, exactly. I just clear out all the children. I create new labels for each one of them. I register so that I know when you clicked on it, and then I add them in. Yeah, so I mean, this is the programmatical way of solving it. Yeah, exactly. I don't know how it would be. But yeah, I don't think right now there's any. At least I haven't seen that there is some for each. Yeah, because usually that's how I would do it in Blaze at least. Yeah, I would have a tag each. Give it a custom element, and it just automatically recreate all of this, and it will automatically. Also, when I hook up to the events of click, I can ask, okay, which one of these elements as you were going over was the surrounding one that I'm bound to.
Yeah, in case of web development. So, like I tried this, as I said, like styling for me is okay, but interactivity is like really on the weak side. I think Unity should release like at least a couple of interactive basic demos, like to-do lists, like this kind of basic stuff.
The demos
for them themselves to understand like how like comparatively better it is compared to like
I don't think they, I mean
React
sort of also they don't really use it enough, I would say. Here if you go under Window UI Toolkit, you have samples. This is also kind of useful. It basically shows all of the controls and how they look like. But yeah, again, and it shows you how to do it from C# and from UXML. So, but yeah, they don't like this is as far as I got to like examples.
What I see, they have a lot of like very pointy samples, like a specific control, a specific thing.
Yeah, this is
what you need is typically the hardest part about
bigger one class
interactions.
Up. Yeah, exactly.
That's the biggest thing about programming.
Yeah, this is just how each control looks like. Okay, but let's answer your question now. So, oops, not this one. If we go to monster type, so around so basically this needs to appear underneath this one, right? Under the name, we have the display name, we have import button. This one we put as a child, right? And then what?
You would set this top element of this first row as relative.
Position relative, it is.
Yes, and his child as absolute.
Position absolute, yeah. And now I don't have to do. Now I can just do top 3, I guess.
Yeah.
Because oh no, wait, no, it would be sort of the same because name was also before at 0, 0. So it's technically the same thing. Because position absolute from this point up here, it's the same the same spacing.
So you don't solve it.
Well,
Quick
I mean,
just
I didn't mean that it doesn't solve it. I'm just saying that.
But
and I can even.
Just a second.
Yeah.
This drop-down element don't solve your problem.
No. This is like I can show you what it is.
Sure.
Oh, I guess if it. Wait, what the hell? Where did it? What element is this even? Is it just a normal div? Oh, it's scroll view. So it's inside now. It's inside because I want if I have too many names that I can scroll between.
Oh,
them.
okay. It's more complicated. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could. Yeah, you do have a point. Like you could have. I do that here, for example, when I have this card. For example, if I go to like here, aberration. This is a drop down.
Yeah,
right?
so this one solves the problem, but that one is more complicated because it has scrolls and
but you see here, this is what happens. You see, this one now appears here.
Okay, makes sense. So,
I can't
sure.
work with it.
A more advanced user interface needs more advanced styling. And more, yeah.
I mean, this was disappointing to me because if I try to do some in-game, I mean, okay, you go as always. You work around limitations.
Sure. Yeah. But you would expect the same behavior as that other one, right? Like to pop up in front of.
Well, if I change the z-index, but literally there's no
z-index. Yeah. But it's not a good practice to work with z-index.
Which is also sad because in UGUI you do have like you especially the ones where are the main part where you put the UI into the game world. Like you zoom everything, like you can place it in 3D, which is the great part about it.
Yeah.
But so it's good for some things and it's bad for others.
I usually feel every time I'm doing CSS and I have to do z-index that I did something wrong.
Oh, I use the index a lot, especially if you know how it resets. Because the thing is, the elements that don't introduce a new sorting order, like you can nest stuff, but if you don't introduce new sorting orders, you can have a z-index element quite deep in, but react relatively to. You just have to have in your head who's the parent against which is the ordering. Because as soon as you have something that has a z-index or position absolute, not position absolute. You see, now I don't know these kind of things off the top of my head. But as soon as you have one element that changes this, then all of the children from there on are now its own unit that gets sorted on its own, and then as a whole unit gets sorted among other things.
Yeah, that's why it's cascade, right?
Yeah, I guess.
I see a lot of people using CSS and they forgot it's a cascade.
Cascading style sheets, yeah.
But this one doesn't cascade.
But really nice presentation, thank you. Thank you a lot.
Yeah, hopefully it was sort of useful or.
Yeah, that's
sure, it was.